ever thought of quitting making art? I feel like throughout my life, I've thought of quitting at different times and for different reasons. When I was young, growing up, we lived in a rural part of Miami, and I grew up very, very poor. So one thing that I saw when I was growing up was that my mother did office work to make ends meet. I did go to art school. After I graduated from high school, I got a BFA and an MFA. And then, of course, realized very quickly that there was really no job path for me. There weren't many teaching opportunities where I lived. And so I went into full-time office work in my early 20s. And, I think there was a certain discipline to living and working every day, having a routine. I was coming up around the time of computer automation coming into the office, so I learned a lot about prioritization. But I also learned that it was incredibly difficult to balance a studio practice and a full-time job, as every artist learns. I had this illusion that I could be a full-time artist and a full-time office worker. And I was frustrated at the pace that my work developed or didn't develop at. I tried a lot of different things over a 30-year period while I was working. And I would say towards the end of my working career, my work started to develop solidity and focus. But over the years, I think it was hard to have patience at the way my work was developing. To sort of jumpstart it in my mid-40s, or actually early 40s, I started to get up at 2 a.m. And do studio work before my day job, because my day job started at 8 a.m. And I would go to work, to be in the office, but I felt that concentrated early morning studio time was really, really important to me. And though I spent a lot of my 40s and into my 50s very, very sleep deprived, it meant that I had a constant conversation with my work, and it allowed my work to actually develop. So I wouldn't trade that, but it was very difficult. And I did think of quitting every so often, especially when I got rejections for things I applied to or felt that my career was not developing momentum. There was always this voice in my head that my work didn't have relevance, that it was never going to get somewhere. And I think the most dangerous thing is to think that it needs to get somewhere. I think I had to be comfortable with the gift in the making of itself. And I go back and forth on that, but I feel like it's the only pathway towards healthy continuing of my work. The question of what would I do or what would I not, what did you do or what would you be doing if not art? So because I've made art all my life, there have been periods when I have not been physically well and have had to focus on my health for periods of time, or the day job has been simply overwhelming. There are a couple of years where all I was doing was simple works on paper with ink because it was what I could manage. Or I was doing sewing projects, things that were sort of low stakes that could allow me to at least have my hand in the creative process. But I never felt fully alive without making art. So I'm not sure that there's ever been a time when I've been completely inactive. I feel like there's times when I haven't done a whole lot, and I have felt deeply unhappy when that has occurred. So I think it's a direction for me that I need to be making something. I have experienced this idea that I was going to climb the corporate ladder or the educational ladder, and I was going to be a successful administrator. And there were times in my career when I did climb the ladder, as it were, but it just didn't have meaning for me in that way. And I knew that I had to make my work. I retired from full-time office work at 53 as part of, I was very fortunate because I was in the old California state retirement system and was able to retire earlier than a lot of people I knew, which has allowed me to focus full-time on my work. And it has completely answered the question of why I made my work in the first place, because it is part of a human need to pursue meaning. And for me, that meaning is making the work itself. I do apply for grants, I do apply for shows, but I try to always center the meaning of making itself.